Hello, my name is Brian. After my father's funeral, I thought silence would keep the peace. But that silence became a weapon against me. My own wife begged me to give up the second villa, my son shoved forged papers in my face, and my daughter whispered to neighbors that I was too old to live alone. They called it concern, but it felt like betrayal dressed in family clothes. What would you do if the people you trusted most tried to erase you from your own life? The morning air cut through my coat as I climbed the granite steps to the chapel. Wet leaves clung to my shoes, and every breath came out in pale fog. I had buried my father in this town, the same town where I spent my childhood. Yet I felt like a stranger standing at its door. Marcus was leaned against a black SUV, phone glued to his ear, gesturing like he was closing a deal. Laura directed people at the entrance, her voice clipped, efficient, like she was running a conference instead of her grandfather's funeral. Emily, quiet as always, spotted me and slipped her hand into mine. She offered me the folded program. Her eyes flickered with something I hadn't seen from anyone else that day: recognition. I told myself, I came here to bury my father, not myself. I sat in the back pew and unfolded the program. My father's name was printed bold across the top, followed by tributes, family acknowledgments, and hymn numbers. I searched for my own. It wasn't there. In small print at the bottom, I was mentioned only once, almost as an afterthought, squeezed between grandchildren and surviving relatives. Emily leaned close and whispered, "Grandpa, they forgot you." Her small voice trembled with outrage. I pressed her hand gently. I wasn't going to make a scene. Silence, I thought, was sometimes the only weapon left. I slipped the program into my coat pocket, where it pressed against the weight of a house key I always carried. Paper can erase a name, but a key still opens a door. That contrast held me steady. Erasure starts with ink. I knew how it ends with life. After the service, people crowded around Marcus and Laura. "You two handled this beautifully," a neighbor praised, patting Marcus on the back. "Your father would be proud." Nobody turned to me. The pastor walked in arm with Laura, thanking her for organizing every detail. Marcus took a call during the graveside prayer, Bluetooth flashing like a badge of importance. I watched, thinking how quickly competence gets reassigned to whoever talks loudest. I've lived long enough to know that in America, respect isn't inherited, it's negotiated. My throat burned, but I swallowed it down. I kept my composure, though the sting cut deep. At the luncheon, they guided me to a side table near the wall. Not with the family, not even near the window. A corner, almost as if they feared I might get in the way of their conversations. Laura decided seating. Marcus paid the caterer, signing receipts like he owned the day. I wasn't included. I was handled. My eyes drifted to the plate of food in front of me, untouched. In that moment, a memory rose like smoke: my wife on her last night, her hand gripping mine, whispering, "Keep it quiet." Not yet. She meant the villa, the second house no one else knew about. Her dying words kept me silent now. Emily tried to join me, but Laura tugged her away, saying she should sit with the cousins. I told myself, even here, I'm just a guest at my own father's farewell. When it ended, we stepped into the cold parking lot. Marcus slid his phone across the hood of his car toward me. "Take a look." The screen showed photos of my own home, angled shots of the living room, backyard, and porch, all dressed up for sale. "The MLS listing, it's for your good," Marcus said, calm like a doctor delivering bad news. "You can't live alone anymore. We've already started the process." I stared at the screen, frozen. Then came the phrase that carved into me: "Until we sort everything out." That wasn't a suggestion, it was a decree. They hadn't asked, they'd already acted. Someone had entered my house, taken photos, staged it, all without a word. The grief of burying my father twisted into something darker. Betrayal had a way of pushing grief aside. I managed only one protest. "There's no mortgage," I muttered. Marcus shrugged like it didn't matter. "That's not the point," he said. My jaw locked. Everything in me wanted to erupt, to call them out for treating me like a burden to be managed. But my wife's words echoed. "Keep it quiet." Not yet. Silence wasn't cowardice. Silence was waiting. The house key pressed into my palm. Sharper now. I let them think they'd won that moment. I drove myself home, alone, while they arranged rides for others as if I weren't even standing there. They made sure I was last to leave, like baggage being checked off. I whispered to myself, "Not today." Back in my car, I pulled the folded program from my pocket and placed it next to the house key. One erased me in ink. The other reminded me of what still belonged to me. Contradictions like that keep a man steady when the world tries to strip him bare. If I spoke then, I'd betray the one promise I made to her. Marcus leaned down to my window before I drove off. "Start packing," he said flatly. "We close in 30. I nodded once. Words caught in my throat. I kept them there, because the truth wasn't ready to surface yet. I didn't go inside right away. I stood at the mailbox, staring at envelopes that didn't even carry my name anymore, just current resident. That stung deeper than I expected. After a lifetime in this house, I'd been downgraded to temporary. I slipped the mail under my arm and stepped through the door. The porch light, still on its old timer, had clicked on at dusk like it always did, faithful to a rhythm my wife once set. Inside, the lemon oil sheet used on the banister lingered, and a faint streak of mud from last week's rain clung to the mat. The house didn't know it was already under negotiation. I boiled water, set out 2 mugs without thinking, then quietly slid one back into the cabinet. The misprinted funeral program was folded against the key in my pocket, a constant reminder. In this country, if you don't speak, someone speaks for you. Tonight, I chose to listen first. Laura texted that she was 2 minutes out. True to her word, her car lights flashed across the driveway, and soon she was at my door balancing a casserole in one hand and a clipboard in the other. Comfort and control delivered together. "Dad, you held up well today," she said, as though grief was a performance to be graded. She set the dish down, then tapped her clipboard. "We've been thinking our basement has a full bath, enough space. It's safe, practical, no stairs to fall on." She listed property taxes, heating bills, liability, winter ice. Her voice carried the tone of concern, but every word leaned toward urgency. "Just until we sort everything out." That phrase again. I nodded, asked questions softly. "How long? What happens to the house?" She answered with phrases polished from repetition, all ending with the same result: me moving out. I kept my voice even. I knew too well how help can be dressed up as a transfer of control. Her pitch expanded. "Marcus already has buyer interest, even over ask. It's a once-in-a-cycle market, Dad." She laid out plans. A weekend truck, a storage unit, even a contractor friend, ready to outfit the basement with a kitchenette. She called it win-win, less to worry about. To her, my home was a transaction waiting for closure. I asked plainly, "What happens if I go?" She skimmed right past the question, with words like options and timelines. I thought of an old saying, "Measure twice, cut once." They'd already cut. I said, "Again, there's no mortgage." She smiled then. "That's not the point." Before I could answer, Emily slipped in, sleeves of her oversized sweater dangling past her hands. She carried a folded paper. She placed it on the table carefully and opened it. A drawing of my garden, sketched with surprising detail, the rosemary by the porch, the lemon tree clinging to life, the little window of my wife's study. Emily looked up at me and repeated words that didn't belong to her age. Grandma said, "Keep what matters." The air shifted. For a moment, I could hear my wife's voice inside that child's tone, steadying my chest. Laura forced a smile. "That's beautiful, honey." Then she turned right back to logistics. I aligned the drawing on the table, square to the edge, marking a line she couldn't cross. Laura pressed again, soft but sharp. "Dad, this house isn't safe for you. Stairs, ice, bills. You shouldn't be alone. We don't want you to get hurt." She mentioned a neighbor who slipped last winter, then floated the idea of capacity evaluations. Said they were routine for men my age. I heard the subtext. Aging isn't just biology, it's leverage. Silence can be mistaken for consent. In my head, Maya Angelou's line rose clear. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. I sidestepped. "I'll think about it." Not yes, not no. No weapon for her paper trail. I poured tea into 2 mugs again. This time, leaving both on the table. One went cold, untouched. I laid out my boundaries in plain English. Tonight I'll rest, I'll eat, I'll lock my own door. I won't sign, I won't list, I won't pack. Laura asked if she could snap a few photos for the contractor. "No," I said. "This house is not a staging area." I told her I wanted all communication in writing, so I don't forget. The phrase played old, but it built a record. She tried one last angle. "This is what Mom would want." I looked her in the eye. "Your mother wanted me to decide." That silenced her. She left the casserole. Left me a deadline too. "We'll circle back Friday." I walked her to the door, but I didn't follow her down the steps. When the house settled again, its familiar sounds returned. The clock ticking in the hall, the heater cycling on, the creak of boards that knew my weight. I carried Emily's drawing into the study and slid it under a glass paperweight shaped like a ship. I considered calling Marcus but chose instead to write a list. What they know, what they assume, what is mine. My wife's last request surfaced again. Keep one thing quiet until I need it. I tucked the funeral program in the desk drawer. The corner caught against something stiff and blue beneath. I let the drawer close without pulling it free. Some silences leave no fingerprints. At sunrise, frost silvered the rosemary, and the lemon tree held stubborn green leaves. Emily had drawn it true. I brewed coffee and laid the program, the drawing, and my house key in a line on the table, the life I still claimed. I called Laura's voicemail and left a short message. "Put everything in writing, please. No emotion, just instruction." I opened the desk drawer again, the blue edge still there, patient. My hand hovered on the pull. My phone buzzed with Marcus's name flashing. "Buyer wants to see the place Saturday," his message read. My hand stayed on the drawer. My phone kept ringing. But the only thing I reached for was the blue edge hiding under the drawer, because if I opened it now, there'd be no turning back. I came back to the desk late that morning. The same drawer I had touched the night before waiting for me. My hand rested on the handle, feeling the drag of the wood, the faint lemon oil my wife once rubbed into every surface. I paused, listening to the house. The heater ticked, a car rolled past on the street, the phone sat silent. I knew once I opened it, there'd be no way to unsee what waited. Some knowledge can't be taken back. I told myself, if silence is a tool, then so is paper. I pulled the drawer. The blue folder sat beneath the misprinted funeral program, a headline under an error. My breath steadied. I opened the folder carefully. The first layer was bank statements. One from a local credit union, one from an online bank. The balances were modest, but every account was in her name. In the margins, her handwriting short notes like, "For taxes? For travel? Not yet?" Then a photocopy, notarized, from a Lisbon law office. The seal was raised. Official. She had typed an index page too. Instructions clear as day. If you are reading this, start here. Bullet points lined out steps, like she knew I'd be slow and methodical. Reagan's words rang in my head. Trust, but verify. I stacked each page in order, not as keepsakes, but as evidence. Beneath those papers was something heavier. I unfolded a deed, Portuguese, referencing a villa in the Algarve. Title, under her full name. It had been purchased 10 years ago, long before she grew sick. Attached was a valuation sheet from the Lisbon office, with her handwriting again. Keep private. A small key was taped to a cardstock square, the tag marked with a single letter, A. I lifted it. It weighed more than it looked, cold in my palm. I copied down the parcel number, the address, the lawyer's contact, block letters in my notebook. No flourishes. I jotted questions too. Title transfer as surviving spouse, local taxes, caretaker oversight. The key sat centered on the blotter, a decision made just by showing it daylight. At the back of the folder, an envelope in her handwriting read, "For when they start circling." I opened it slowly. Her voice filled the page. Calm, precise. She predicted the calls, the pressure, the fast sale language. "The house is yours," she wrote. "The villa is leverage. Sometimes the only way to win is not to play." She named Marcus and Laura without anger, just accuracy. They count what isn't theirs yet. One line was underlined twice. Do not warn. Act. I let the words settle into me like steel added to bone. I read it once as her husband, once as a witness collecting proof. Tucked in the back pocket was one more sheet. A name. Anna. A Portuguese number. A note in her hand. Trust Anna. Long story. I didn't let myself imagine what that story was. I stuck to facts. Call through counsel first. Never send money direct. No careless emails. I noted Portugal's time zone. Sketched call windows. I circled the idea of a new P.O. box. Protection starts with small moves. I slid Anna's contact into a separate envelope and labeled it, "Outside the house." I turned to my notebook and divided a page into columns. What they know, what they don't, what I want them to think. Then a fourth. Who needs to be notified, and when? Attorney, bank, Lisbon Council. I wrote the date and time at the top, always timestamp. In this country, if it isn't written, it isn't real. I tucked the funeral program beneath the folder. A mistake kept as Exhibit A. I stood and looked out the study window. The rosemary in the garden was silvered by frost. The lemon tree still clung to green, stubborn against the cold. I remembered her last winter thin hands. Steady voice. Keep what matters. Not yet. Now I saw why she delayed. Timing is power. Surprise is protection. I placed Emily's drawing beside the key. Past and future lined up on the desk. I breathed in for 4, out for 6, my new ritual, to keep the ground steady. I snapped photos of every document with my phone, saved them into a locked folder, then onto a fresh thumb drive. Originals went back into the blue folder, and the folder into the wall safe behind the books. I dialed my attorney's line, left a voicemail. Title verified. Lisbon Council, confirmed. Need a cease and desist draft. Ready. Before I could exhale, the doorbell rang 2 sharp chimes. A second later, my phone buzzed. Marcus's text lit the screen. We're coming by tomorrow with someone you should meet. The Algarve key sat on the desk, its shadow stretching across my wife's letter. Stubborn, like it knew this fight wasn't over. I noticed them before they even cut the engines. 2 cars idling on my curb, Marcus in front, a second sedan marked with a Realty logo on the door. I didn't open the door wide. Left the chain on. That was my choice, my signal. Cold air threaded in through the crack. Behind me, the smell of coffee drifted from the kitchen. The blue folder was locked away, out of sight. On the step stood Marcus, Laura, and a man in a tailored suit, briefcase slim in his hand. I kept my voice low. Even. State your purpose. No walkthroughs today. I've learned if you control the door, you control the meeting. The man smiled like it was his living. He slid a folder toward me, saying it was a letter of intent. Short fuse, he added. Over asking price. Clean offer. As is. He spoke as if the deal was already half done. He mentioned photos taken already. A staging schedule penciled in. I asked, who authorized photography? His eyes shifted to Marcus. He called him the family representative. Hope isn't a strategy. Paper is. I reached into my pocket and handed him a card I'd prepared the night before. My attorney's address on it. Send everything there. He leaned forward, tried to angle inside. The chain stayed on, the hinge tight. He gestured at the porch. Just 5 minutes to peek at light and layout. I shook my head. No entry without my written authorization. Marcus's voice cut in sharp. Dad, don't make this embarrassing. The agent tapped his tablet. Checklist ready? Basement conversion. Exterior shots. I noted every phrase, the time, the date. A log from my lawyer. I repeated one sentence. Calm. And final. You do not have permission to enter or photograph. That was when the neighbors slowed. 2 with their dogs paused. A Subaru braked. Driver leaning to see. An audience was forming. Laura softened her voice. Pitched it to the sidewalk. Dad, everyone's worried about you. Staying in this big house alone. Marcus didn't miss his cue. Doctors say falls and memory issues go together at his age. The agent nodded with practiced sympathy, his tone carrying just far enough. I felt the shame try to rise, the hot flush of being diminished in front of strangers. I swallowed it back down, recognized the tactic. Make it public, force compliance. I dropped my voice instead, forcing them to lean closer. I set the frame back in my hands. 3 things. I own this home. I have not listed it. No one is authorized to act for me. I lifted my phone, recording light glowing red. Not a threat, a record. I read from a line I had drafted. Further contact must be in writing to counsel. Do not return uninvited. The agent's smile cracked. Marcus muttered, Dad, you're being dramatic. I gave him a proverb. Good fences make good neighbors. Good boundaries make good families. I closed the door, left the chain in place. Silence was my punctuation. A text buzzed. Laura, let me in alone for 5 minutes. I opened just enough to talk through the crack. She tried again. Safety. What Mom would have wanted. She pressed about the basement. I answered softly. Your mother wanted me to decide. That stopped her eyes for a beat. Then she pivoted storage, packing, collecting things, just to get started. I said no. Nothing leaves without my signature. I laid out the clean path. Email only. No more porch debates. She gave me a tight nod, but left me with a deadline. Friday. Then she turned back to Marcus and the agent. Once they were gone, I sat at the desk and dictated a timeline into my notebook. Every phrase, every face, recorded. I called Alvarez's office, asked for a cease and desist drafted and a notice of non-representation filed with the county. I emailed a summary, attached a short audio clip from the porch. I kept it factual. Time, date, names, logos. I ordered a new deadbolt, booked a locksmith, scheduled a P.O. box run. The letter of intent went into a manila folder labeled unsolicited. As the sun slid down, a white envelope slid through the mail slot. Brokerage letterhead stamped on the corner. Inside was a notice. Saturday showing, per conversation with your son. I read it twice, hands steady. I set it beside the funeral program. 2 pieces of paper, both attempts to erase me. I drafted a line to Alvarez. Proceed with certified notices and recorder filing. Then the porch camera chimed. Twice. Not a ring, just presence. They were back, and this time they weren't asking. I was up before the sun, waiting for Alvarez's office to open. The phone felt heavier in my hand, not because of age, but because of what it carried now: evidence. I gave his assistant a crisp rundown of yesterday. The porch scene. The letter about a Saturday showing that never had my consent. I asked for 2 things: cease and desist to the brokerage and agent, and a notice of non-representation filed with the county recorder. I read her names, timestamps, even the partial plates from my porch log. She confirmed certified mail, return receipt, recorder fax, hard copy to follow. I asked for something simple I could tape on my storm door, a 1-page notice. Plain English. In a loud world, I said aloud, paperwork is volume control. Driving to Alvarez's office, I passed the brick facades of town. His building used to be a bank, still had the old vault door in the lobby. Value used to be weight. Now it was documentation. Alvarez skimmed my notes, nodded at my log entries, and sharpened my language into something firmer. He didn't need the blue folder in his hands. Portugal stayed off U.S. emails. He laid out the next steps. Certified notices that afternoon, the county flag by evening, and a phone script for any more courtesy calls. He handed me 2 items, a printed cease and desist, and a laminated notice for my front door. His words were worth keeping. You don't win arguments, you close lanes. As I walked out, the phone lit up. Marcus, we need to talk now. Laura, this is getting out of hand. Then a call from an unknown number. The brokerage manager. He tried the soft approach. We're all on the same team here. I read Alvarez's script word for word. All communications in writing to counsel. Do not contact me directly. He pushed for a walkthrough out of courtesy. I repeated the line, ended the call, and forwarded the log to Alvarez. Subject: unauthorized contact 12:04 p.m. Anger knocked hard, but I let process answer instead. Back home, I taped the laminated notice inside the storm door glass, angled so the porch camera caught it too. The new deadbolt slid home with a sound more reassuring than any speech. A second notice went on the side gate: use counsel's address. I set a manila folder on the hall table, labeled it violations. Anything new slid under the door would land there. Emily's drawing went on the entry table, my reminder that this wasn't just about me. For the first time in days, the house sounded like itself again. Then Marcus called. His tone was honeyed at the start. I'm worried about you. But soon enough the words came: capacity, evaluation. He floated conservatorship like it was kindness. To me it was a leash. I asked flatly, are you alleging incapacity? He hedged. We can't wait for mistakes. That wasn't an answer, and he knew it. I cut through. Thursday, 2 o'clock. Here at the house. Bring your counsel. Mine will attend. I read him the door and recording policy. He called it hostile. I called it clear. When I hung up, I wrote one line in my notebook. They will come dressed as concern. Preparation kept me steady. I built a slim binder. Timeline. Call logs. Letters. The porch recording on a thumb drive. Copies only. I typed up a one-page agenda for Thursday. Ownership status. Non-representation. No listing. I shut off all shared access. No more garage keypad codes. No shared camera feeds. I tested my phone's auto record setting, red dot visible. I applied for a P.O. box online. Planned to pick up keys later that day. The blue folder stayed in the wall safe. Portugal was leverage for another fight. Not this one. Before dusk, I dialed the Lisbon firm. A short call. No details. Just verifying their email and courier process. The lawyer's voice was calm. He confirmed they could prepare surviving spouse standing and caretaker authority. I repeated my rule. No mail to my house. P.O. box only. I drafted a note for Alvarez about a holding trust. Something boring and forgettable. My wife's underlined words echoed, "Do not warn. Act." I wasn't posturing. I was positioning. Evening settled. I brewed tea. Binder on the table. Notice glowing in porch light. The camera pinged, no knock. Just a shadow lingering out of frame. A moment later, a thick envelope slid under the door. No return address. Medical assessment options for seniors. I bent down, picked it up, logged the time, and slid it into the violations folder. I texted Alvarez. Material received implied capacity issue. The deadbolt was solid. The gate was locked. I switched off the hall light and let the house settle. Quiet made every sound louder. I wanted to hear the next move before it spoke. At 9:07 a.m., I saw them through the sidelight, 2 officers in uniform. Cruiser parked nose first toward my driveway. I kept the deadbolt turned, porch camera blinking red. One spoke first, voice firm but polite. "Sir, your family requested a welfare check, concerns about memory and falls." I answered through the door, calm and steady. Gave them my full name, date of birth, even held my license up to the glass. I didn't admit a thing about incapacity. I offered them options. A porch conversation with the chain on, or a driveway talk if they wanted me outside. What I didn't offer was an open door. I slid a folded page through the mail slot, plain English, from my attorney. No consent to search. All communications to counsel. One officer read it. The other logged my vitals, asked me the date, the president's name, the street I lived on. I answered without hesitation. The glass between us was all the boundary I needed. I kept myself disciplined. Wrote down their badge numbers, their cruiser ID, even the time they knocked, asked for the incident number to mark it properly. I told them, "I appreciate you checking on me, but I do not consent to entry for a non-emergency." One officer admitted a family member had called twice, pressing the issue. I asked them to record in their notes that I was oriented, safe, and wanted any future contact in writing. "If it isn't written, it didn't happen," I said. They nodded, thanked me, and walked back to their car. My porch camera caught them leaving. I emailed Alvarez immediately names, times, and a photo of the attorney notice, still taped on my storm door. My anger was there, pushing, but I didn't let it take the wheel. Paper beats volume. 20 minutes later, a white van rolled slow past the curb, staging logo plastered on the side. 2 men hopped out. tested my side gate like it belonged to them. I stepped to the back door, voice even, phone in my hand recording. Private property. You are being recorded. No entry. They claimed agent approval. I asked one question. Do you have my signed authorization? Silence. I dialed the non-emergency line, reported attempted trespass, gave the plate number, and asked for a patrol swing by. The van pulled off, but not before one of them lifted a phone and snapped shots of the siding and deck. I raised my phone, snapped him back. After they were gone, I printed 2 signs, no photography without owner consent. Taped one to the side gate, the other at the front walk. If they wanted documentation, I'd give them plenty. I wasn't content just logging things at home. I drove down to the station, stood at the clerk's window, and asked for the welfare check report. She printed the line while I waited. Resolved owner, competent. I photographed it, emailed it to Alvarez, with the subject line, welfare check closed. I asked about issuing trespass warnings. The clerk explained, first a documented notice, then enforcement if they return. Good enough. I drafted a no trespass named parties sheet on a notepad before I even got back in my truck. I sat there with a coffee in the cup holder, breathing deep. 6 seconds in, 6 out, before heading home. On the way, I texted my neighbor Joyce. If anyone came to my door this morning, you didn't imagine it. I made a different call after lunch, this one to my granddaughter Eva. I kept it light, asked about her essay, about the sneakers she had been saving up for. Then I told her something clear. My help to you is direct, not through anybody else. That way, it doesn't get lost. I set up a small monthly transfer, straight to her education savings account. Confirmation email, sent to my P.O. Box alias. I told her, if an adult says I can't help you unless it goes through them, you call me first. Always. She whispered, thank you. Her relief loud enough to fill the silence. I wrote one line in my notebook. Support is a boundary too. Later, Marcus called. His tone was sugar on the surface, sour underneath. Dad, staging didn't get in. Why are you making this hostile? I didn't take the bait. Hostile, I said, is stepping into a man's yard without his consent. I logged plates and times. He accused me of manipulating Eva. I answered flatly, my support to Eva is not a bargaining chip. It's mine to give. He threatened an emergency petition. I told him, bring your counsel Thursday at 2. Mine will be here. He pushed the decline narrative. I countered with facts. The date, the officers' names, the incident number proving me competent. He didn't have an answer. Silence stretched. He hung up first. By evening, my binder grew thicker. I filed in the welfare check printout, the trespass draft, the photo of the stagers, the time-stamped call notes, copies in the binder, originals in the drawer, thumb drive updated. On a new page, I wrote the Thursday agenda. Ownership, non-representation, no listing, no access. Written contact only. I tested my phone's auto record setting again. Red dot, blinking in porch camera view. At the kitchen sink, I looked out at the lemon tree. Its leaves shook steady in the breeze. I whispered the line my wife had left me. Do not warn, act. At 5:41, my voicemail caught a new voice. Hi, this is Adult Protective Services. We received a referral expressing concerns. They wanted to come by at 9 tomorrow morning, just routine, to ensure safety. I forwarded the message to Alvarez, asked for his presence by phone, and requested written confirmation of my rights. Then I drafted a 1-page script. Porch only. No entry. ID checked. Answer short. I slid the script beside the attorney notice at the door. The house was still, but I wasn't fooled. Quiet didn't mean safe. The porch camera pinged, one last time before dark. A figure stood at the curb, head tilted, reading my laminated notice under the porch light. He lingered too long, like he was hunting for a loophole in plain words. I woke at 7:30, kettle whistling, while the house still carried the kind of quiet that presses in. On the table by the door, I laid out my folder. Driver's license, medication list, my physician's card, Alvarez's letter. Next to it sat my one-page script, short sentences. Porch only. No entry unless warrant or emergency. I tested the porch camera, made sure the red dot blinked where it could be seen. My phone recorder was charged. I sent Alvarez a text. APS due at 9. Please stand by. He answered in one word. Ready. I walked out to the lemon tree for a minute, breathed in, reminded myself that boundaries aren't defiance, they're care. When I came back inside, I placed a chair by the side light. Sitting would be better than pacing. Calm shows more than words ever will. At exactly 9, they came. 2 workers, clipboards in hand, polite but firm. I kept the deadbolt set, spoke through the glass, held up my ID. They recited their script, concerns about confusion, falls, finances. I asked for their names, credentials, case number. Then I read from mine. I answered orientation questions without hesitation. The date, the address, my physician's name. I listed my routine breakfast at 7, garden walk, bills checked on Friday. Offered vitals with my own cuff, right there on the porch. Showed photos on my phone of the grab bars installed last year. No interior access. Alvarez's voice came steady over speakerphone, confirming we'd cooperate within rights. APS nodded, adjusted their forms. I closed with one clear request. Please mark no imminent risk if your notes support it. They pushed gently on finances. I stayed firm. Explained autopay handles utilities. Ledger balanced weekly. No joint authority to children. Showed them the laminated notice on my door and the county record number stored on my phone. For emergency contacts, I gave my doctor and Joyce next door. I left Marcus off, made sure they wrote it. They asked me to walk down the walkway. I did. Steady. Explained my exercise routine. Last preventive visit date. They seemed satisfied. Promised written determination in 48 hours. I asked for a card, took a picture of it, logged the time. My notes read, no signs of neglect, oriented X3, independent ADLs. Their words, not mine. Proof of life, in their own ink. Inside, I emailed Alvarez my notes. His reply came back with a draft. Cease and desist, wired to brokerage, agent, and Marcus. It barred further third-party contacts, no staging, no welfare calls without true emergency. All communication to counsel only. Attached was a no trespass warning for PD. I signed, scanned, filed. Sent him the porch cam stills to show cooperation in good faith. A ping followed certified receipts from yesterday, delivered. I wrote down the green card numbers in my ledger. In the margin I noted, paper makes memory public. Then came the call. Unknown number. Voice too smooth. Claimed adult services follow-up. The vocabulary was wrong, too practiced. I hit record. He asked about my banking activity. Said it was urgent. I asked for his agency code and callback. He gave me a generic toll-free line. Wrong move. I ended it with my script. Put it in writing to counsel. I sent Alvarez the audio and transcription. He forwarded it to the state APS and telecom fraud unit. Paper trail widened, 2 minutes later, Marcus texted, "Heard APS came by. See? People worry." My reply was one line: "Your worry should respect my rights." Then nothing more. Silence. Again, the sharper edge. At the kitchen table, I stacked receipts, logs, the spoofed call transcription, printed, filed. I prepped a slim packet for the afternoon meeting. Ownership deed copy, cease and desist, welfare check resolution. On top, a page titled, "Rules for Today. Porch only unless invited. Recording active, agenda numbered." I made 2 binders, mine and Alvarez's. Red tabs on "No authority granted." Checked the mirror shirt, pressed, posture open, voice practiced low. Brewed tea. Set my lock screen to Eva's last text. A heart and her grade. My anchor in plain sight. Out the window, I caught Joyce waving. I walked to the porch, told her lightly it was just house business. A dark SUV idled at the corner, circled once. Porch cam caught the plate. Logged at 12:37. A delivery van dropped a package, no sender listed. I photographed it, added it to questionable mail. Walked the side yard, checked the gate lock, noticed the laminated notice still crisp under the noon Sunday. Back inside, I switched the phone to Do Not Disturb, only Alvarez and APS unblocked. At the bottom of my notes, I wrote, "They prefer fog. I prefer daylight." At 1:58, gravel hissed. Tires rolled in. Camera pinged. Marcus stepped out, suit beside him, Lorna trailing. The man carried a folder thick with tabs. Marcus didn't knock. He read the laminated notice first. Alvarez's text came in. "In the driveway," I answered. "Doors stay closed until rules set." I set my binder on the table, hit record on the phone, walked to the door. Chain locked. I opened just enough. My words were steady. "Gentlemen, we'll begin on the porch." The suit looked at Marcus. Marcus nodded, then lifted a paper stamped in red. I kept the chain set. Phone recorder visible, porch camera blinking, binder open on the hall table where I could see my agenda tabs. I told them the rules. Porch only. All parties named on audio. One at a time. No stepping past the mat. Alvarez's voice carried from the driveway. Calm, but close enough to hear. I slid a sign-in sheet and a 1-page protocol through the gap. The attorney frowned but signed. Marcus tried to lean forward, toe on the threshold. I tapped the laminated notice taped to the glass, "No entry without warrant or emergency." He froze. I spoke the time into my recorder, noted the APS incident number from that morning. I knew they'd tried to twist capacity into a wedge. I cut them off before the hinge creaked. Their attorney launched into his pitch like he'd rehearsed in front of a mirror. A packet held high. Concern for welfare, property mismanagement, urgent need to list. He waved a pre-filled listing agreement as if my signature were a formality. A memo of family consensus got a solemn nod from Lorna. He spoke of me refusing safer housing, hinted at delusions of travel. I answered with 2 words: retirement plans. I asked for authorization signed, verifiable. He answered with implied authority. From adult children, I smiled without warmth and recited APS's findings. Oriented, independent, porch cooperation. I held up their card in front of the camera. Alvarez cleared his throat. It was the sound of a rook sliding into play. Then, Alvarez unzipped his case. He handed the attorney an envelope, stamped and sealed. Cease and desist. Notice of non-representation. Receipts already certified. Alvarez read from it slow, each clause like a nail. No solicitation. No staging. No buyer contact. All communications to counsel. Trespass warned. I logged the time allowed. Porch camera caught the red stamp. Paper louder than rumor. Their lawyer bristled, muttered, heavy-handed. Alvarez countered with precedent, tortious interference with real property. Lorna's eyes flicked to Marcus. Their script was slipping. I added just one line. This is my home. That's not a metaphor. That's when the bait came out. Their man mentioned a buyer. Ready cash, quick close, small facilitation fee for the family liaison. I asked straight, name? Proof of funds? Who's the liaison? His eyes shifted toward Marcus. Silence made its own record. Alvarez requested the LOI. The man produced a thin draft with exclusivity and a penalty clause. I read it out loud. If I refused, I'd owe introducing parties a bill for not selling my own house. I said it plain. The words chilled the air. Alvarez called it what it was. Predatory pressure. He noted for the record that pressing further could mean a bar inquiry. Marcus swallowed and tried to steady his voice. But then came their ace, the paper meant to end the argument. A notarized power of attorney, dated last week. My name at the bottom, Marcus as agent. Alvarez asked for the notary's commission number, checked it live on the state site. Expired. 2 years ago, I compared the signature to my driver's license. My own hand never bent a bee that way. Alvarez spoke sharp. This is a forged instrument. Porch Mike picked up Marcus whispering. It's standard. Everyone does POA. Alvarez didn't flinch. Not with dead commissions. I stated for the recorder. I did not sign this. I grant no authority. Alvarez photographed it, emailed regulators, and said the word criminal out loud. That cut deeper than any insult could. I laid out the off-ramp anyway. Withdraw all listing efforts, retract the buyer approach, stop the welfare stories, put an apology in writing. Alvarez added, mediation available in 30 days. Written contact only until then. Lorna's shoulders softened. Marcus spat words like nails. Paranoia. Stolen inheritance. I didn't blink. Inheritance is a gift of the future. Respect is the cost of the present. Their attorney tried to pivot, suggested a safety inspection. I said yes if licensed, scheduled, and through counsel. The chain didn't shift. Alvarez read a prepared statement. Reports to APS for misuse, to PD for trespass, to the state bar for the POA. He held up a printed no trespass form with brokerage and contractor names. I signed. He filed it on his phone. I uploaded the Porch audio to my secure drive file named Porch Deposition. I sent Joyce a short message. If anyone asked about the house, direct them to counsel. Alvarez sent notice to the buyer email. Their papers grew lighter in their hands as mine stacked heavier. I looked at Marcus and Lorna. I'll help Eva directly. If you try to cut that line, you end it yourselves. Marcus muttered control. I said, care. Lorna dropped her gaze. I gave them my wife's line. Trust is interest-bearing until you default. Alvarez closed the meeting. Future contact in writing. They stepped back from the mat. They didn't look taller for the papers they carried. Then, Alvarez's phone rang. He listened, put it on speaker. The registry clerk's voice filled the porch. Commission lapsed 2 years ago. The notary on record passed away last spring. The air froze. Their lawyer clenched his jaw. Marcus went pale. Lorna gripped his sleeve. The porch light gleamed off the red stamp like a warning flare. Alvarez hung up and said evenly, "We'll preserve the original and notify the DA." I marked the time into my recorder, closed my binder with a sound that was final without needing to be loud. Across the street, The dark SUV idled, watching, waiting to see what paper weighed more, blood or law. When the porch emptied and the SUV rolled off, the quiet sat heavier than the shouting ever did. Papers remained on the table, their edges sharp against the lamplight, like ghosts refusing to leave. I walked through the house, checked each lock, each light, not because I doubted, but because ritual makes a man steady. Alvarez stayed behind a moment, flipping through his notes. "They know the DA has this now," he said. His voice was matter of fact, no drama. He reminded me APS would close their file as no risk, and the DA would open theirs on the forged POA. I nodded, feeling how betrayal rarely ends with noise, it drains out, leaving silence behind. Joyce called from across her porch. "You did good, Brian." Her words dropped deeper than she could know. Alvarez's phone buzzed before he left. APS's email pinged through. Oriented, independent, no neglect. Clear. Then another. DA's office requesting custody of the original POA. Chain of evidence, porch recordings. Alvarez explained what that meant: criminal inquiry possible. Bar complaint certain. I said it out loud, slow enough for the recorder. Forgery is theft with ink. My own voice sounded like someone else's, older, but anchored. Marcus texted, "Will appeal." Alvarez typed back, "All future contact through counsel only." The fight had shifted. Paper and law, not noise or fists, had the last word. I sat at my kitchen table. The deed envelope, sealed for years, lay in the drawer. I pulled it out, set Eva's photo beside it, whispered, "This is for you, not them." The second villa, Florida sun baked into its walls, stood in my sole name. My wife and I had tucked it away quietly, with no one the wiser. I drafted a letter to Eva. Upon my passing, the villa would be hers, conditions plain. Education, stability, not squandered. Alvarez notarized, filed with the deed. That house now lived beyond their reach. Silence hadn't been cowardice. It had been time bought to move on my terms, not theirs. Later, I pressed play on her last voicemail. My wife's voice still steady. "Keep something for Eva. Don't let them grind her down." On the chair rested her scarf, folded since the beginning of this storm. I held it, not as grief, but as evidence. I spoke to it. Low. "I did as you asked." My chest eased. Memory wasn't just absence anymore. It had become compass. That scarf stopped being a wound. It marked the boundary between what they tried to take and what I kept. I called Eva. My voice didn't shake. "Honey, today was rough, but you're safe in my will." She stumbled over fear, asked if they'd hate her. I answered in plain words, "Maybe, but you'll have your own roof. Hate can't repossess a deed." Her crying softened into breath, then into, "I love you, Dad." That closed a circle I thought had been shattered. I told her, "Use it to build, not to hide." She promised she would. Her voice, fragile but clear, was more binding than any notarized paper. By dusk, I carried my binder to the porch. The scarf lay across my lap. The pie Joyce had left still warm on the porch rail. Birds quieted. The street calmed. Life pulled itself back to ordinary. I whispered a line from Lincoln, my own benediction. "I do the very best I know how, the very best I can." I accepted betrayal for what it was, but I also knew dignity heals in quiet. Joyce lifted her fork across the street, no words needed. Ordinary kindness sewed seams that law never could. Later, I opened my journal. Legacy isn't property. Legacy is boundaries taught. I wrote each twist as if they were lessons. Silence, law, choice, truth. My final line on the page: my villa stands, my daughter stands, so do I. I closed the book, locked it with the deed and letter in the fireproof box. For the first time in weeks, I flicked off the porch light at 9 sharp, not as a defense, but as a habit. The house breathed. So did I. I lay down, phone on the nightstand, buzz unknown number. No voicemail. I turned it face down. That's tomorrow's fight, not tonight's, I whispered. The scarf sat folded beside me. No longer anchor, just company. The wood creaked under the settling house. I smiled at it. Old wood holds. And as sleep came without guardrails, one line followed me into the dark. I kept quiet, but in that silence, I chose the words that mattered.